and then the woman's body will freak out and contort and go into all this kind of like, almost looks like they're having an epileptic fit as their energy expels through the body. And then she might start doing these mudras with her fingers and her eyes rolling around the back of her head as she kind of enters these different realms. And then you kind of leave her and, lie with her for like maybe 10, 15 minutes as she's going through that. And eventually she'll kind of coming back to earth. She will feel that womb orgasm for 3 days in her body.
As part of the Maniphesto Men's Network, my friend Andrew Sweeney and I are running an experimental online classroom for guys on Wednesday evenings. We're going to be exploring a lot of the topics that we talk about in Technosocial: the internet, digital culture, paradigm shifts, all of that. If you're interested, check out the links below. Well. So we are here today with Alexa Vartman, who is the founder of the New Tantra. Now, we did a podcast a few months ago with Paris and Timo from the New Tantra, which has wound up being one of our most popular episodes. Just called it How to Have Sex, I believe. And of course, with a title like that, people are going to run to it. But today we are here with the founder. And so Alexa, welcome. It's great to have you here with us.
Fine. Great to finally talk to you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, indeed. And so I thought, let's kick it off just with a bit of a what is Tantra? Because it's one of those, at least to my mind, still slightly confusing topics when I'm thinking about spirituality. Like there's people, like initially when I heard Tantra, I thought slow sex, and then I heard sex without coming. And then I've met people in the New Age scene who are very into it. And I discovered there's Hindu Tantra and there's Buddhist Tantra. And then I discovered there's the New Tantra, which seems to have its own flavor as well. And I'm kind of curious, is there a common thread running through in them? And what does Tantra mean to you?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? What does Tantra mean to me? And that's why I came up with the name The New Tantra. So I didn't have to be restricted by the older tantric practices. And I'm not a big scholar and go back into the history and everything of Tantra, but for me, Tantra is a way of doing a strange thing, which is the sutric paths are about renunciation and about restricting your pleasure. And then there's other tantric practices which increase your pleasure. And you can use that kind of stretching mechanism in all aspects of life. So that's what we do with the no coming part you mentioned, is we practice how to have really good sex, not just good sex, but really, really, really good sex for as long as you want, hours, and building up that pleasure to that most pleasurable point, which is, if you look when you have an orgasm, the most pleasurable part for me is just before you climax. And so we practice to kind of edge and get to that 0.9% and just kind of stay there. And what that does is it kind of scratches that sexual itch. If you do that, then you kind of get so horny that you can get past your shame barriers, you can get past your limitations and really open up. Then an interesting thing happens, that as you get past your shame, you start to do all your sexual fantasies, which we've found for most people, especially women, is that they will get over their shame of, say, for example, their lesbian fantasies, and they'll actually go and do them. Because in my surveying of women, thousands of women, nearly every woman is masturbating to girl-on-girl sex, for example. But they never do it. They're kind of waiting for another woman to come up and propose to them to do it. So they all many women will sit there and not actually scratch that itch. A lot of guys, most guys aren't so much into maybe fantasizing about other guys, but a lot of guys are kind of quite sexually interested in the penis. I mean, when you look at porn, most guys aren't just watching just lesbian porn, although that can be great and fun, but they're normally looking at a dick and a vagina, right? So then we all go, okay, what happens if you kind of really get past all your shame and so on. And we've found that, if children are sexually active when they're young and they're playing doctors and nurses with other kids, they're generally touching both genders. We've found about somewhere around 98% of kids who are playing doctors and nurses will do with boys and girls. And then you come later, where as you get older, then someone shames you. Oh, you only play with the opposite gender. You have a boyfriend or girlfriend. You don't do the same gender. So we get all this kind of homophobic stuff often conditioned onto us. And what we've found in the new Tantra is that we say, look, we don't care what you do, as long as it's between consenting adults and, just you're both into it, then it doesn't matter what you do. And so we find, during the first night, the women all start getting into each other, and great. And then guys might start, touching a dick or something and seeing how. And we find that most people do become sort of what we'd call heteroflexible. They'll generally prefer or have that same the preference for what they've had before, but they might start to explore and actually enjoy doing things that are in their conditioned way of being sexual. So that's one example of stripping away the conditioned, which is kind of part of the ego, and going beyond that and finding out, okay, who am I really? That's the big question, right? Who am I? Because we have so much conditioning on us that it limits us from growing open that. And we just use sex because it's such a charged area of life, but you can do this in every area over your life. You can really discover, who am I? And the interesting thing with sex is, once you really do all your fantasies, once you kind of live that stuff out that you're thinking about, you actually stop thinking about sex. Not only do you stop thinking about it, you stop dreaming about it, you stop fantasizing about it. I mean, you still can fantasize, but it clears away your fixation on it. And that creates an ability to meditate and rest open without having those kind of horny thoughts and everything so much. So it allows you to go to a next level. And the new Tantra has 10 levels of workshops and things. We just start with the sex stuff to get it out of the way, because it is such a big charged area for most people. It's hard to meditate if you've got a headache, but it's hard to meditate if you're super horny, right? So we use these different levels to clear people until you can sit and relax and meditate open, for hours and hours at a time, which is basically what I do. I just, sit at home and sit for maybe 10, 12, 14 hours a day and just be quite happy and blissful about it. For me, that's kind of like one of the goals of this whole thing. So that's what Tantra means to me anyway.
It's fascinating. So like, you go through the whole sexual fantasy and the whole sexual drama precisely so, like you said, you get to this space where you can just rest in your emptiness and have your meditation. Like, it reminds me, a friend was telling me he spent some time in a very traditional, very sutric Buddhist temple, all men, and then one day a woman came, and he said all of these monks who'd spent hours and months and years meditating just they wanted to catch sight of the woman. And he found it fucking hilarious.
Right.
He was like, that desire has not been renounced one bit.
Right. Exactly. So you're exactly right. You're still at square one. You could meditate for years, and it might be, like you said, a woman. It could be a mobile phone that you're fascinated by, right? It could be a car or food or having money or power. There's all these things that we fixate on, that and that, to me, it has this bigger question: why am I alive? Why am I here? Why do we incarnate in a human body in this realm? And my theory is that we come here with these desires, these kind of karmically inbuilt longings. Okay, I have to have a body to have sex, but I also have to have a body to eat, or to enjoy traveling, or to enjoy having a family and all this stuff. And the question is, when do you really do those things to absolute completion? And say, like for me, I've traveled every country that I've been ever interested. I've been traveling for 30 years. And then there's the point where it's kind of like, I've been there and I've done that, and I know it's not really fundamentally any better than where I am right now. Okay. And you kind of scratch that itch and it kind of dissipates. I had to go through a whole thing of cars and fast motorbikes and computers and technology and all these things. What happens when you've got enough money that you've kind of bought everything that you've wanted, and you've kind of then bored with buying stuff? What happens when you've traveled the world? What happens when you've eaten all the best foods and so on, that you kind of get bored with eating? So you just kind of eat once a day just to kind of get it out of the way, but the rest of the time you don't think about it. What happens when you've had, enough possessions, or you've experienced almost everything you want in life? There's a lot of people that have done some of that stuff, but very, very few people have done it in the sexual realm. When you've done every one of your fantasies, but you've also mastered sex so that people will pay you for you to fuck them. That's where I got, where women were paying me 10,000 euros to have sex with them for one day. It's 20 hours I was with them. Because once you can not orgasm and you can stay at very, very high levels of horniness, it allows you to kind of be able to empathically feel into what the other person is actually feeling. So you don't have to guess and do technique. You can actually feel what they are longing for in that moment, and you can kind of merge with them. And once the woman's body has been de-armored, which is, I think you spoke about this, Paris and Timo, taking out sore and numb points out of the vagina and the cervix. Those areas, the cervix, the uterus, they can orgasm, not like for 5 seconds like on the clitoris, but for 5 minutes. The womb can orgasm for 20 minutes at a much more intensity than the clitoris could ever orgasm. So there's ways with Tantra that you can open up someone else and take them way higher than they could ever take themselves. And you can go into these very profound, almost like you're taking mushrooms or something, into very profound spiritual realms just through opening up very deep parts in the body. For the women, that's the cervix, which is a gateway to the uterus. For men, it can be through the ass, through taking out the shame and the tightness and the pain in the ass, and opening that up, you can go into it. So there's quite profound things you can do with the human body. And once it's really open, once you got to master it, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, ho-hum. Like I always say, every woman at the end of the sexual journey, at the height of their pleasure, the way the body opens is like clockwork, and every woman's built the same. There's no variation in how the cervix and the womb opens up yogically. And once you learn how to put that key in the lock, it's like, okay, I've mastered sex. I've been, and that's for me where I kind of lost interest in that. So for me, I don't have really not any interest in having sex with women for many, many years. I mean, you can ask Paris and so on. When we go out, we're hunting for guys, right? I'm not interested in women, because I know how to unlock that lock, and I kind of got bored with it. It's like, okay, so many women have paid me lots of money to do it, and it's kind of like, I wouldn't do it for free. It's a lot of work. And then you're having to try and pick up some woman and chat her up at the bar and buy her drinks and take her to dinner and be nice to her and everything. And then go home and they have to do all the physical exercise on top of that. It's like, that to me is just like unpaid work.
So that begs the question, do men have a more complex lock?
No, not really. No, it's you can have way more pleasure through your ass. Again, you could use both, right? So the ass and the penis together, it's kind of like the clitoris for the woman uses the pudendal nerve. For the man, the penis is the connected to the pudendal nerve. So you can use that. But if you really want to have full body orgasms and so on, there's yogic ways to do that through the anus, which we teach on the workshops and show them how to do all that stuff. So no, it's also pretty simple. But you can't get to those really pleasurable things unless you get really good at not coming. Otherwise you start to get very pleasurable and it's game over very quickly.
So I'd like to inquire a little bit around the coming bit. So you mentioned that in society, people are usually very bound up with sexual thoughts, and we come into this world with these deep longings. But in Tantra, it's kind of counterintuitive, whereby by not coming, you perhaps attain that satisfaction. Is that what you're saying? Because it does feel a little bit counterintuitive. So by not satisfying it, you satisfy it. Could you sort of elucidate me a little bit on that?
Yes. So that little spasm orgasm, that little 5 seconds or 10 seconds of spasm orgasm is quite an intense little buzzer. And it's very pleasurable. But what I found is that as soon as I would come, then I would kind of lose interest in sex, right? I mean, straight away, your kind of appetite for sexual pleasure goes down. The person you're with often then looks more ugly or not so attractive. And it does seem to be this kind of repelling mechanism in the orgasm. I mean, it's kind of built into sow our seeds and try someone new. And I think I heard the statistic the other day is that the average length of time for marriage these days is 8 years. I mean, I lasted 10 years, but I mean, 8 years is it doesn't seem very long, right? Plus, less than 50% are even staying married anymore. So the whole thing with, okay, what happens if we don't take that little 5-second intense spasm orgasm? That's where I say with the edging, you can get very close to that horniness, but you don't take that cookie, as we always say, have 2 cookies after dinner instead of 1 right now, and not go for that instant gratification. So you get close to that amount of sexual pleasure of the orgasm, but you don't actually squeeze the bodily base and take it. And that allows that pleasure to circulate more through the entire body, which is a more subtle but sustainable level of pleasure. Does that make sense?
Yes. And would you say that requires engaging in forms of pleasuring that are usually bound by society, that there are ridden in shame and in guilt and in taboo?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, there's still, there's a lot of countries that were British sovereign countries have, still like in Africa and so on, still have these anti-sodomy laws, where you can go to prison for like 10 years if you're caught sticking your dick in another guy's ass, right? I mean, it's crazy. Why would governments care so much about what 2 guys do in the privacy of their home? It's illogical because you can have, normal anti-rape laws, or, you can't do someone against someone else's will. Great. We need that. Why do you have to have a second law saying, if you stuck your dick in someone else's bum, you'd have 10 years in jail or something? It's kind of illogical. They would have to have that extra step. Why is that? I think the main reason for that is there is so much fear and shame and contraction in the human body. Now, a woman will store that in her cervix. A man will store it in his ass. I mean, we can also store it in their anus, but a guy store that shame and that fear in their ass. So the fear of, go to prison and some big black guy is going to rape me or something. I mean, that's my idea of a good date now, right? But that used to be my big fear, when I was, a teenage boy or something. there is so much taboo in those areas. Why is your transsexual porn so big? Why is lesbian porn so big? Why is all these kind of shameful things? Often it's to do with a longing to do that yoga. And that's why we, in the TNT workshops, they will de-armor the men's and the women's anuses, de-armor the cervixes, take the shame out of that, take the taboo out of it. It's like, okay, wash your ass out. We have gloves, have lube, and what happens if you let a woman stick her finger in your eyes, guys, in your eyes? Does it feel pleasurable? Does it get you over that shame? Does it? And then you can open up. Now, one of the ways I learned how to be paid by women for sex is by being in that receiving position and learning how do I want to be taken? You can read a book about that all you want. You're not going to get very good at it. You need to actually maybe experience what does that feel like to have a woman stick her finger in my ass or fingers or whatever. How does it feel to be taken, to be kind of dominated a bit, to be directed and led, which are all, especially for men, that's a huge shame. We used to work in countries like Turkey, and the women would always come to us, my husband likes me to stick my finger in his bum, but he's so worried that makes him gay. It's like, no, it doesn't make you gay if you want your woman to stick your finger in your ass. What's the problem with that? But it's just such a taboo thing that no one really talks about, but most people are kind of masturbating to something kind of shameful. It's like, that is the one big thing, crusade I've had in my life is, as long as you're having consenting sex with another adult, it doesn't matter what you do. Don't have any shame about it, because often your fantasies are longings that could yogically open you up. So you're exactly right in your question. It's just those taboos and shames are limiting our yogic practice.
So from what you say, I gather that one of the biggest longings that you've noticed that are taboo have, in the case of men, have to do with their asses. What about with women?
Women seem to have less sexual shame than men. I mean, women can, hold hands and kiss with another girl, guys don't generally do that as much unless they're gay, no problem. But so women don't seem to have as much shame, but they can still have shame, especially around themselves doing things. So women might not be so judgmental about someone else. Like quite a lot of women will watch men's gay porn, for example, or they will have a friend. Oh yeah, my friend's lesbian, or my friend's gay. They don't have a problem with it so much, but the shame can be more on themselves doing stuff. I think about girl on girl stuff, but I don't actually ever really go and do it, or so on. So yeah, you're right. Men just seem to have a lot more of this kind of bravado of, I'm just into women. I'm not into women. Oh, okay. Maybe when I was a little child, like 3 or 4, I used to play with boys and girls, but I'll erase that from my memory because I just didn't know any better then. So that's what we find in TNT, as I alluded before, that a lot of people will just relax that whole taboo shame thing. And then you can find that you're quite different to actually how you believed yourself to be, which is a voyage of self-discovery.
Can that be challenging for people?
Oh, it's incredibly challenging. Incredibly challenging. When you suddenly find out that your self-image, which is the ego, right? That your self-image doesn't match who your parents would like it to be, or society would like it to be, or that even yourself doesn't perhaps accept that part of yourself. It's incredibly challenging. And then you get this, kind of second life that you hide behind, closed doors. That's why, for one of the reasons, that I cross-dress and I, publicly and professionally, I, come out in my feminine. privately, I might just sit home, just sitting meditating as a guy on a couch, right? Because men should not have shame about their feminine. Women don't have shame about their masculine side. Women have been wearing pants and men's kind of clothes since the Second World War, since Coco Chanel started designing suits for women. But as I mentioned in my book, I mean, if you're a guy and you walk into a boardroom meeting in a dress, you'll be laughed out. A woman can do that, no problem. But a guy, absolutely not. So that's why one of the things I say, well, why can't men have a feminine side? I think I look much better in my feminine than my masculine. It's much more fun to go clothes shopping or shoe shopping in my feminine side. I'm bored of shit doing that in my masculine. But why should men have shame about their feminine side? They think it's weak or it means I'm gay or whatever hang up men have about their feminine side that women don't.
Have you encountered any sort of criticism about how you define feminine and masculine and associating that to primary sexual characteristics? Because we know that today there's a lot of conversations about that. And I believe that the way that you use feminine and masculine tends to be associated to the sexual characteristics. So have you found any pushback on that? Do you have any thoughts on that distinction?
I mean, I've been criticized. We've had criticism about almost everything we're doing. But yeah, it's a hot topic right now, this whole masculine, feminine thing. So for me, I mean, I'm just a big lover and supporter of the feminine. That's why I dress and present as a woman publicly, because I mean, I love the feminine. It's to me, it's the joy of life. Even sexual energy, I think, could be defined as feminine life force energy. I don't think there's any such thing as masculine energy, so it's all kind of the feminine, Mother Nature. You don't call it Father Nature. It's the feminine is everything. And I worship the feminine. It's not that I want to go and have sex with a woman. I actually get horny on my own feminine, not the other way around. So yeah, it's a hot topic, this whole masculine and feminine thing. I'm kind of using it more from a very, very traditional baseline perspective of the feminine is energy and the masculine is consciousness, is that void that everything light and matter and everything appears in. So that's how I'm kind of rooting the masculine and feminine, and you can't really argue with that in a way. I mean, that's the base level of things, and then how that expresses through people. Then you get into all these complications and what definition is acceptable and not, and so on. So yeah, I don't try to get too much of that. I say, okay, this is just my opinion. This is my expression of it. This is how I see it, and you have your own, and all good. Let's leave each other alone and be happy.
Of course. And another one that comes to mind here is that, do you think that you mentioned a while ago that taboo breaking is important? Now, the way that I see it, taboo breaking can be very energy powerful. It can generate a lot of energy precisely because of the breaking, because of the transgression, because of that, that overcoming of a prohibition. But would you do you think that society's norms can get so relaxed that certain taboos will no longer be taboo and therefore deplete that energy? I don't know if this question is clear enough, but maybe.
No,
yeah.
I think that is the definition of evolution. If you look back what was acceptable in the 1950s, I mean, that was incredibly uptight back then and before, and things get more and more relaxed. And yes, when you break those taboos, you do release a lot of energy. It's incredibly fun when you first do it. And after a while, it kind of becomes a little bit ho-hum and relaxed. And I think that is the definition of evolution, because there's a certain point where you've kind of done everything that's on your karmic longing to do. And then it's like, I haven't had sex for ages now, and it's like for months, and I go like, yeah, it's like I don't kind of miss it, but if it's there, and okay, then great. But otherwise, it's like, it's not a big deal anymore, like it used to be. In my 20s or something, if I went for 6 months without sex, it'd be like I'm tearing down the walls down. And I don't think that's just an age thing. It's just because I have done that so much that it's kind of like, yeah, take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that all men have the capacity for androgyny within them? This is a debate I was having with a friend of mine.
Oh my God, that is the $64,000 question. That's a really good question. Now, I have to be afraid, careful that I don't project my own stuff, right? But when I first started the new Tantra back in 2010, I thought, okay, I just want to do Tantra my way. I don't care about how it was traditionally done. I don't care if it's right or wrong. I'm just going to do a workshop that I wish that I had gone to when I was younger. So I said, okay, for level 1, we'll just teach them all about the theory about why you shouldn't come, how it creates a kind of depression in your mood, that it makes you not a good lover, that it, because you can't feel the other person, or you kind of come too soon if you get used to ejaculating, or not watching porn too much because it trains you to come too quickly, and so on. And then one of the things is, I want to have a party where we dress all the men up as women, and the women dress the men up as women, and the women will get dressed really slutty and black stockings and suspenders and corsets and so on, to get over their shame, and the guys get dressed up as well, and just to see if how they do in their feminine side. Now, I thought there wouldn't be anyone coming to my workshops, or just a few kind of weirdos. And when we started doing these workshops, guys would be very reluctant. You might get like some CEO from a company who's like, oh, it could be so shameful, I don't want to do that. It's like, okay, you don't have to, but if you want to, try it. And the women really enjoy like having a Barbie doll to dress up, right? Dress Ken up as a Barbie doll, great. And then after like 10 minutes of being out there, the guys are like dancing and feeling a kind of joy and so on in their feminine side that they haven't ever felt before. And everyone just got into it, and it would just become this huge party that became one of our, flagship workshops to do is, okay, let's dress the guys up. Everyone have a big what we call slut party. And I found that, now we may have a kind of audience that is open to that, obviously, but we don't get anyone pushing back on that anymore. People just, once they get into it, they just love it, because there is a certain level of relaxation and carefree fun that a guy can have in his feminine side that you can't have in your masculine side. So maybe everyone has that capacity. I don't know. But it's certainly in our people who come to our workshops seem to. Now, they've probably heard about it before, and that's why they're coming. So it's hard to know. I don't know really if everyone has that capacity, but I would suspect maybe 90%, 95% of guys, if they actually had no shame, if they were brought up in a culture, in a world where men and women would change, which we might be in, 100 years or 200, 500 years from now. In Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, what his name is, puts guys walking around there also in their uniforms with skirts on. Maybe he really is a visionary. Maybe it will be very common for men in the future to be in their feminine side also and not have shame about it. I hope so.
Yeah, it's like I said, I was just having a discussion with my friend Cadel Lost about it. I think partly inspired by the fact that we hang around with our mutual friend Alexander Bard, and like
love Alexander. Yes,
he's great, right? Cadel and him are in the Alps at the moment, fucking writing the next philosophy masterpiece, I think. So I think there are
he's
right now as we're speaking, actually. So,
right. He's such an interesting character. Yes.
Yeah, he's fascinating. And such a big part of his philosophy is around archetypes, right?
Right.
And so he's like theorizing that there are androgynous archetypes, and then there are like androgynous priestly archetypes, and then there's what you might think of more like traditional masculine archetypes, like warriors and hunters and so forth, and what
Yes.
they play out as today. And I guess what we were wondering is whether for, say, a man in like a very warrior archetype, like let's take a guy who's a soldier, for example, about as masculine as you can get, would a tantric androgynous practice be of any benefit to that? I mean, the question, what would he get anywhere near it? I don't know. Two, would it be of any benefit to him? Again, I don't know. That was just kind of what we were riffing around.
Yes. Again, I can only give my experience in this, but I found that I was able to get stronger in my masculine when I embraced my feminine side more, which sounds, kind of illogical, but, I don't know about the soldier doing it, but I certainly found that I could, be riding motorbikes, or I could tough it out, or I could, be kite surfing or mountain climbing or whatever more kind of macho things. I did a lot of karate for many years. I found that I could be stronger in my masculine out of the bed, but also in the bed. I could be more present and directive if I had gone into my feminine side very strongly also. And the stronger I got my feminine, the stronger my masculine side got. And that's why in the new Tantra, we recommend switching, because if a guy is, and just talking sexually, because it's a very obvious way to illustrate it. If a guy is doing all the work, all the push-ups, spending the energy and being present for the woman and opening her up, sooner or later, he's going to run out of charge. He's going to run out of energy. And that's why I mentioned before, the feminine is energy. Like, she's lying there in a heterosexual scenario, receiving the guy and kind of enjoying that, and she's getting more and more full of energy and so on. There's a point where he'll just be depleted, like one battery draining and charging up the other one. If you want to be able to, fuck for like 20 hours or whatever, like I used to do, you have to be able to switch back and forwards. I mean, after half an hour or something, you need to be in the feminine to get your batteries recharged. And I found that not just in the bed, but also in life. If you're just, and maybe that explains why these CEOs or these very powerful executives that will then go to an extreme level of like BDSM submission or something to a mistress to really get their batteries recharged there. Maybe that's one way. And I think that should be part of society that has no shame about it. It's like, you're always in a dominating position or directing position. Sometimes you want to surrender and be let. It doesn't mean you have to put a dress on, but just to be directed, told what to do. You're my little play sexual toy now. It's your turn to receive. So, yeah, I don't know if it's for every. That's why I say maybe 95% of men that might work for, but there might be a small percentage of guys that just would never work for them being in their feminine. And that's cool. We don't need to be one or the other. So, yeah, that's my take.
What does it look like to fuck someone for 20 hours then?
Yeah. Okay, I'll briefly explain one of the 10,000 euro sessions. So typically I would come in and in my masculine, it would be the woman who's generally, pretty well off, rich, a woman, obviously. Often it would be the husband or the boyfriend would pay also, because he wanted to learn how to really fuck his woman really well. So I would come in, and often I would start with a woman, and I would come in my masculine, and I would say, okay, and you both get sexually tested and show your certificates to each other and everything, so that you can kind of be free, because it's hard to do the energy transfer stuff and be, fucking for hours and hours with condoms and things, right? So you get sexually tested for every single STD, and then you get consent, you get, sign forms and so on, and then you say, okay, now would you like to surrender, because you look pretty fucking hot to me and I'd really like to take you. And then I just would go super masculine. It's like, okay, yeah, you want me to be rather dominant? Yes, okay. And you get consent, you make sure they're kind of, and then I would kind of very much mentally dominate them. Like, okay, then that means that I'm going to fuck the shit out of you, and you're going to be my little girl, because I think you want to be fucked like a dirty little slut. Is that right? And they go like, yeah. Okay, cool. Good. Take your clothes off. Right. And then I would just dominate the way that I wish guys would do that to me. I don't want a guy to say, hey, kid, do you kind of want to be sexual now? Should we play around? And like, I don't know. Do you? Like, no, just fucking take me, fuck me, because the deepest expression of the feminine, once she's loved and honored and cherished and knows she's safe and it's all consensual and so on, if the guy's just super nice all the time, she's going to get bored with that. So there's a point where the woman really wants to be allowed to get over her shame of being a dirty little girl and be really fucked. So then that's what I would do. I would make sure that her vagina's been de-armored prior. So you'd have to do all that in the session. And then I wouldn't sit down and worry about foreplay and all that stuff. I mean, the woman should be wet and longing just from you talking to her, looking her in the eye and say, okay, right, turn around, show me your ass. Yeah, I'm going to fuck that so hard. Oh my God, you're fucking hot. Look at that ass, look at your body, legs. Put this on, dress up. You're my sex toy. Put these stockings on. I want to see you in a corset. I want you to pull your hair back. I want you to, dress up for me, because you're my sex toy right now. And it sounds it sounds so kind of wrong, that, oh, you're going to be my sex object. That's in my feminine. I want to be that guy's sex object. I want to be there, that he's desiring me. So then I would do that. Then I would fuck the shit out of her, which is, okay, you once the cervix is de-armored, my dick will go straight away to the cervix. It doesn't, I don't sit there licking their clitoris or, fiddling with their boobs or whatever too much. I'm kind of looking at her and I'm sliding in slowly in her, then I'm making sure that her cervix is de-armored, and then I'll slowly and gently start to, with not much movement at all, I'll start to like bump against the cervix and move energy into her cervix and check that there's no pain there. And normally if you put your dick on a woman's cervix that hasn't been de-armored, it's like sticking a knife into her. It hurts like hell. So you have to take that numbness and that pain out of the cervix. But once you do it, it's incredibly intensely horny part of the woman. It's probably the most horny part of a whole woman's body. And then you just kind of like, you don't have to move a lot. You don't have to do a whole bunch of pumping and this and that. You just kind of bump against the cervix, and then I will talk to her and I'll make her or invite her to own her slutty side. It's like, okay, you like that? Yeah, you like that? You really want me to fuck it? Yeah, yes. So you want me to fuck you a little bit harder, this? Yes, yeah, a little bit harder. Okay, you want to be fucked like this, and then you build it up over time. So maybe in 20 minutes, once there'll be a point where that woman will just be going completely out of her mind, and then I'll be like fuck talking the whole time. See, men are more visual. Women, and this is a generalization, are generally more auditory. They need to hear what you're doing. They want to hear you say, okay, you really want to be fucked like a dirty little girl, like this, bang. Like, yeah, like this. You mean you want to be fucked this hard? Like the really dirty girls, bang, 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 bang. Yeah, like that. Bang, bang, bang. And then you just like fuck the shit out of her. I call it mashing the potatoes. and you just fuck the shit out of that cervix, bang, 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 until their uterus is just shaking and orgasming. And that vibrating orgasm of the womb will start going through their whole body. And then it's just like going to the gym. It's like running a marathon. It's like bang to bang, 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 bang. You dirty fucking fuck you, me to fuck you like that. Bang, bang, yes, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. You dirty girl, bang, 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 bang. And you do that for like 20 minutes or as long as you can. And then you kind of like, for once she's been womb orgasming for 20 minutes, full body orgasm, her eyes are rolling around the back of her head. The vagina will fart and expel air like an accordion. It'll blow up with air and then it'll push it out. The woman can be softly ejaculating liquid onto the penis, which comes out through the urethra as she softly. So the womb orgasm has very, very specific ways that you know she's womb orgasming. And then she will kind of, then when you stop, and you can have periods where you still or what, and then when you kind of, I will pull out quite quickly. And then you've kind of run that marathon. And then if you want to continue, you have to then switch. And that's when I would go and say, okay, good, let's have a break. You go have something to eat. And then I would go and get dressed up in my feminine. And then she would do basically that to me in reverse. She would peg me or something. And I would then go through that same process myself. And then I would, go back in, we'd maybe do some lesbian stuff, so very gentle, soft, moving stuff, because lesbian sex is hot to watch. It's porn, but it's 10 times better to do it yourself with a woman. To be two girls together, it's incredible. So
wow,
you've got
that's an idea. I've not tried that.
It's incredible. It's so, there is really horny stuff in the homosexual stuff, like being two lesbian women together. It's as I said, it's so much better than just watching it. And the way, like, I would notice that I would kiss differently, I would touch differently, it'd be so much softer. It'd be like this kind of dolphin sex thing. It was something that I'd never experienced before as, growing up as a straight Australian guy. It was immensely like a whole world of pleasure that I had never experienced before, to be two girls together, playing together. So do that for a while. And then I'd go back into womb orgasming her. And then that's generally when we'd bring in the boyfriend and the husband. They could be watching us do lesbian stuff or what, and then learning how to allow his woman to womb orgasm. So often I'd get her womb orgasm and I'd say, okay, quick, jump in there. And I'd bang, 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 bang on the cervix. So he could see his wife womb orgasming on the end of his dick. That is an incredibly, incredibly horny experience, to see a woman fully letting go in a full body orgasm on the end of your dick. There is no greater pleasure. And that's the problem, is that you have to be good as a man of not coming. You have to have trained yourself to be masturbating for an hour or two at that point of not coming. So that when you've got a woman who's womb orgasming on the end of your dick, that's the actual yoga for the man. That's where he proves his mettle. Because most guys, if you stick your dick in that woman who's womb orgasming, you'll come in an instant. You can't help it. It's like a waterfall of sexual energy flowing through your body. You have to get very, very good at circulating energy backwards, away from your dick, into your tailbone to go up your spine. And the roadblock between those 2 points is the anus. If your anus cannot feel immense amounts of pleasure, it doesn't mean you have to have something in there. If your ass is not totally relaxed, being able to feel immense pleasure, that energy will get stuck in your dick and you'll just come straight away without wanting to. So that's where you have to really allow the energy to move back into the tailbone, and it'll go up the spine itself. People think, oh, how do I move energy around through my spine? You don't have to. It will move up by itself, so long as you can allow it to cross that barrier of the anus. And then once she's orgasming, if you can pull the energy through your body, you will feel her orgasmic energy through your own body. That's why you can lie still and just lie in her. And that's how you can have sex for, 10 hours or something, is you can then just be receiving energy through your penis, through her orgasming into you, through your body. And then you can circulate energy between the two of you. And that's when you can go to these incredibly divine, beautiful realms without having to expel a lot of energy. And that's where you can, good tantric sex is the equivalent to sleeping. You can, 5 hours of good tantric sex is like 5 hours of fucking. So, quite often we would just not sleep. But you're not tired the next day because you've been receiving so much energy. Now, obviously, after a while, you need to dream and so on. So what we'd often do in that session is, after you've been having sex for maybe like 10 hours, is then you'd sleep for a few hours, rest your body, let yourself dream. And then after 2 or 3 hours, you might be all ready again, and then you go again. So you have a small sleep in that. But it's basically 20 hours minus 3 or 4 hours of resting. It's like 16, 17 hours of pretty solid fucking. And that's why they would pay 10,000 euros for that, to learn how to full body orgasm and go into tantric realms of sexual pleasure that they've never experienced before. And once you've done it once, that doorway is kind of open. Once a couple can do that, it's actually quite easy to do it. I mean, it's like, if I ever have sex with a woman, which is very rare these days, but if I do, I mean, it'll always happen. It's just, that's the natural evolution of the human sexual body, is to full body orgasm, for the womb, the cervix to orgasm, for the guy to be able to move energy through his body. That's just natural. It's human sexuality is such at a base, low level of the way most of us have sex in society. It's like kindergarten. It's like, oh, you rub your dick and then, sperm comes out of it and that feels good. Or, you rub your clitoris and you have 5 seconds. I mean, it's so low level. It's so basic. And that's why I always say to guys, like, I'm not so interested in like having sex with women or anything. You guys learn this stuff, because if you learn how to do that with a woman, you are like Superman. We have gigolos, Timo that you spoke to, and Diesel and these other guys that we train, that get paid to go and fuck women. I mean, what a great job, right?
Mm.
Anyone can do that. It's just once you learn the tantric techniques, they work, and they work incredibly well.
So not coming, womb orgasms, circulating energy as a man up your spine.
Yep. And that's why everyone focuses Tantra, it's about sex. No, it's not. It's about moving energy and not taking instant gratification, renunciation of that orgasm, which is one of the most difficult things to do, is to not come, because, one thing is you kind of lose your interest in sex. You kind of, for me, it makes me kind of grumpy for about 2.5 weeks, kind of makes me a little bit, I don't notice for the first couple of days after an orgasm, but if I have a miss, I'll notice. And the girls like Paris did this experiment the other day where she like came like 10 times on her clit, and then she's like, oh, I got suicidally depressed. She said, like, after doing that experiment for about 2.5 weeks, and then you get out of that mood and you get happy again. But there does seem to be some mood changing thing in the orgasm, and that's not proven in science. That's just what we have experienced ourselves. So the whole renunciation thing, but the main reason for renunciation is that if you've just come as a guy in the last few days, it's very hard to not have that muscle clench and spasm again. But after about 2.5 weeks, that orgasm clenching thing gets easier not to do. And the longer you don't do it, the easier not to become. So we've had a lot of guys who have premature ejaculation problems coming to our workshops. And they will find that once they start doing the renunciation thing, if they can just like not masturbate, just not touch their dick, for a while, you'd think you'd get more sensitive and more horny. But in fact, the opposite's true. That, I mean, I just did like about a year and a half or something of not having any ejaculation, no mistakes, we call them misses. And it was just incredible. I thought, it's so easy not to come. It's like, it's never going to happen again. But then once you have that miss, then I find that if I have sex then in the days afterwards, it's incredibly difficult not to come. So the longer you don't come, you're training your body not to do it. I mean, animals don't come very much. No, and we're one of the few animals that do regularly orgasm so much. Every other, okay, why are humans the ones that have all the prostate cancer thing? I don't know, but we're certainly a strange animal that we're coming all the whole time, because most of the other animal species aren't. They'll only ejaculate when they're procreating. So, yeah, that's all in my book anyway.
I've got the book. I enjoy reading it.
Have you finished it?
Well, I dip into it from time to time, because it's like I haven't read it cover to cover, but it's quite nice to just flick to a page and be like, oh, today I'm going to read about open relationships, or today about partying.
Right. 50 misconceptions of sex. Yeah, I try to have like 50 small chapters so you could do exactly what you said, standalone, bite-sized chunks of, completely different, topics often, So,
talk a bit about like open relationship practices, because this is something I'm beginning to explore with my girlfriend at the moment, just like very early stages, like just saying, all right, let's play around with people a little bit on nights out and see what happens.
Yeah, you ask good questions, guys. I like this. Yeah, this is again another hot topic, because one of the surveys I read, that of the like millennials and younger guys. How old are you guys, by the way?
I'm 26.
And I'm 29.
Okay, so are you millennials? I don't understand.
I think technically, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just about tail end of millennial. I think
okay.
Yeah.
Right, so you younger guys, they did a survey and they found that 50% of the millennials theoretically would like to have an open relationship, but very, very few of them are able to pull it off. I don't know what the statistic is, but very few people are able to actually have an open relationship. But 50% would like that. I mean, that figure staggered me. And one of the things that I wanted to do this lifetime is try and find out how to tackle some of the biggest issues for humanity. And one of them is, how do you keep families together? How do you stay attracted to your partner? How do you not fuck up your marriage or whatever by going and having a secret affair? Because, you see so much of this lying and cheating and so on, because of course we're always attracted to other people. That's just how it is. You might deeply love one person and want to stay with them and so on, but there's still going to be attraction to outside people. So what are the possibilities? One is you repress that urge, you put your blinkers on and you don't do it. Now, the challenge is that if my theory, for example, is correct, that we have these sexual fantasies and all these things that we want to do, most people are masturbating to something that they're not doing with their partner. They're not sitting there like masturbating to monogamy. It's kind of rare, like, oh yeah, same vagina for the next 20 years, great. But they're, we're thinking like dirty little things like group sex or same sex or cross-dressing or little fetish stuff, or that very often you don't do with your partner. You can't do bisexual stuff with one person. It's just theoretically impossible. So then the question is, okay, how do we then skillfully deal with the attraction to other people? And that's why I kind of wrote that. There's quite a few chapters in that book about monogamy, and it's one of the big fears. A lot of people, especially women, say, oh, if I come to your courses and do Tantra, does that mean I have to have sex with other people? No, you don't at all. There's absolutely monogamous couples that will come to our workshop and they will just do all the exercise together. That's great. I mean, it's so much easier to be monogamous with some person. You don't have to worry about STDs. You don't have to worry about jealousy and comparison and all this stuff. It's much less drama being monogamous. Now, for some people, that's where they want to be. That's great, and I totally support that. But there's some people like yourselves that say, okay, but I would actually like to try and have an open relationship. Right. Well, then you're going to have to do a shitload of work, because you're going to have to deal with your insecurities and your jealousy issues. What is jealousy? Jealousy is basically fear of losing something that you value. Or, I'm insecure. She might get fucked by a guy who's better fucking me, or has a bigger dick, or whatever. So it brings up a lot of often our really deep, not just shames, but fears, insecurities. And that's why it's such fertile ground for growth. How do I deal with my insecurities? How do I deal with transparency? How do I feel, So we always say, if you want to start practicing open relationship, the best way, we always say, is, we have like a whole bunch of points in my book about it, but the main one is, if you want to do it, then talk about it. Talk about the rules and transparency and thing. And then what you do is you invite a guy into your bed, not a woman. You invite another guy into your bed. It doesn't mean that you have to play with the other guy sexually, but it can be really fun to open up your woman, two guys together. Most women are fantasizing to it. Vast majority, right, of being fucked by two guys. Great. Team up with your brother and, fuck your woman together. There's going to be a lot less drama. You try and bring two women together, you're going to have drama off. And you're going to try and satisfy two women. I mean, don't even try that unless you can totally womb orgasm one woman open. You're not going to be able to satisfy two women. So, and if you suddenly you're going to find the new one more interesting and attractive than your current one, then you can get into all that sort of problems, and it's just a potential, clusterfuck. So, yes, well, that's what we say. Bring another guy in. Now, if you can then, if you want to play with him and get over your homophobic stuff and suck his dick or something, then cool. Then see if you like it or not. I mean, for me, the most straight guys are the ones that go, yeah, I've sucked a dick. It was fine. It was no big deal. Whatever. I'm not so into it, but yeah, it was fun. But they're kind of straight guys. A guy who's, oh no, fucking, I would never suck a guy's dick. Me thinketh he protesteth too much. There's probably something there. I mean, guys that are, I had some friends in Sydney when I lived there. I was like the straight guy that would hang out with all the gay guys. And a couple of my friends got gay bashed by like 10 guys. And then when he was lying and they got a bleeding to, this two of those guys came back and tried to have sex with them. Homophobia is, generally a sign of latent homosexuality. So, there's a whole bunch of good stuff that can happen in open relationship, but you've got to then, work through your stuff.
So one of the things that has been crossing my mind has to do with the role of technology, namely the pill and contraceptive technologies, in enabling so much of what modern sexuality has become in the last, 70 years. Because before that, sex implied very likely pregnancy. So the consequences were very evident. Not so much right now. And so for the last 70 years, we've been dealing with the consequences of that. Do you have a point of view on this, also in light of how your practice of Tantra and sexuality are rooted in traditions that are older than 70 years?
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. Just some comments on that, and then we'll see if I answer it. The pill was a huge thing for the sexual revolution, for when they could take control of their sexuality. And, that's all pretty well documented. Now, in Tantra, we don't have to worry about that because you're not coming. you're not ejaculating.
Right.
So that whole contraception issue is just not an issue for us because we don't do that.
Right. Okay. Interesting, because one of the ways that I've been coming to understand Tantra versus Sutra, in context with Owen, in context with Alexander Bard, has to do with this idea that Sutra is about the rules, is about following the rules, and Tantra is about being skillful and evolved enough to bend the rules. And it feels like the pill is kind of this silver bullet. All of a sudden, you get to bend the rules without any consequence. You get to have sex without consequences. You get to have free sex with however many people you want, male to female, without pregnancy being a consequence. And so that's what's been on my mind recently, really trying to understand how restraint versus unleashing come to play here, because I asked this in the previous question, and it kind of remains true until now, which is I'm very interested in how this interplay between total, like restraints, I will not come. How does that connect to I will not come, but I'll let myself do anything else with a massive lack of restraint? And that sort of tension, that's what I'm coming to understand being at the core of practices such as your own. And I don't know, that tension is paradoxical, but simultaneously very interesting.
Yep, agreed. Yeah.
I see. Oh, and do you have any?
There wasn't a question
on that.
No.
No, there wasn't.
What's in my head now is something I've heard like many of our tantric friends say is like the no tantra without sutra. So this not lapsing into one or the other kind of way of thinking. But for example, I've had recommendations from friends like, right, if you're going to start exploring the tantric path, make sure you've got a strong sutric foundation. Make sure you've got some kind of meditative or yogic practice, some kind of structure in your life, so that when these intense flows of desires and the identity transformations that kind of come along with them happen, you are not just like someone being thrown out of a boat into the open ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's a very good comment. And I think that if people do want to do this sort of path, it's exactly right. Get some discipline, a sutric path. I started in sutra. I started in very much, making sure that I could control myself, that I wasn't just out of control and so on. And then as you get really good, as you're good at control, then you start to go into the more tantric way of building up and exploring more and more, passion and more energy and more freedom. But it's good to be able to start in the opposite, which is the sutric stuff of controlling yourself and making sure that you can handle those things. And that's where people think, Tantra is just about freedom to get hedonistic and do whatever I want, fuck whoever I want. No, you should, like you said, start with being able to really control yourself, convictions, get your shit together, understand how to sit and meditate, for hours and so on, and control yourself. And then go, okay, now I've done that. Now let's go into the more, free and more open expressions of tantric practices.
And it's interesting, right? Because I've also heard, when I hear people criticizing the new tantra, one of the things I hear is that it's like using spirituality to be hedonistic, or that it's burning people out. But from what the conversation we've had today, it doesn't sound to me like that's anything like what you're recommending.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that Tantra is very misunderstood. As I hear from other people, they say, yeah, everybody's talking about you guys, either they love you or they hate you. There's not a lot of in between, and that's one of the things is marketing is good marketing. We're very controversial, and whenever we have something controversial, like someone writing an article how much they hate us or whatever, just seeing that our sales go up. People come along to the website and say, I just hear everyone like they either love you or they hate you or they're criticizing you or they think you're great. And I just really wanted to come and see for myself what the hell this is all about. And most people that come to our workshops say that. And then they come along and they see, it's the opposite of maybe what they'd heard, that it is, very kind of scientifically based as much as we can, and being responsible and consensual and caring about other people, and how do you love people, how do you worship the feminine, how do you control yourself, how do you become a better person. And sex is just a vehicle for that. It's not just about being hedonistic pleasure seeking, but that's that's an easy jab to throw at a wild and crazy Tantra school like us. Is like, I don't like them. It maybe they just afraid of that part in themselves, and they project that onto us. It's like all the fears of what they would really like to do. I mean, most of the really have problems with other people having too much sex are generally people who aren't having sex themselves or don't have a good sex life. I don't think we've probably been criticized by someone who's having a sounding good, profound sex life. The naysayers are very often, not happy. They're discontent. So then they just, want to throw their anger out through a keyboard at us. But as I said, it always seems to improve our sales. It's just as long as people are talking about it. The thing you have in marketing is just you're not noticed, you're not ignored. And I would say in the last few years, there's been an explosion of Tantra schools, especially in Europe. And where it's this big thing, Tantra. And when we look at all their websites and we hear about them, I think about probably 90% of them are RX students that and stuff, and go and emulate it in their own way, which is a huge compliment. It's like open up something that hasn't maybe been done before, even though Tantra is thousands of years old or something, where we've opened up things that have seemed to really help people, and they might say, I could do it better, I'm going to go and do my thing. Like, no one seems to get anywhere near the numbers that we get in our workshops. But great. Let's get Tantra out there. Let's spread the word and try and do it responsibly and safely and consensually, and that become better people. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
Why is it that some people hate you guys so much? Is it like you said, there's people who are dissatisfied actually project?
Yeah, I think you've got this Dionysian, Apollo, Polyany, whatever. That's happened from the beginning of time. Is the free and wild Dionysian people are very much judged by the more controlled and safety conscious, like, let's limit everything. Let's just be, all boring together. They don't like the wild, crazy ones. It's an age old, from Greek mythology. It's this age old conflict. So it's very easy to criticize someone, a school that is on the kind of cutting edge of liberating and taking away shame. It's scary stuff, and so it's just super easy to criticize. Yeah.
And have you found that is Tantra in the way that you understand it only applicable to sex, or are other things also perhaps vehicles for this transformative type of energy? I'm thinking specifically about things like anger. Do you reckon that they
Yes,
are?
yes. So as I said, we have like 10 levels in the new Tantra, and sex is only the first 3 levels. And then there's whole, life's purpose. How do you do men's group, women's groups? How do you use anger? How do you meditate? How do you transform and receive critical, constructive criticism? How do you deal with your ego? How do you deal with prayer? How do you deal with surrender? So there are all the higher levels that we go to. It's just that everyone seems to want to talk about sex, so we'll talk about it. But for me, that is just the beginning.
And what are the tools, that are involved in those levels? Because we've spoken about some of those sexual tools, but we haven't spoken so much about the tools involved in other levels, other flows, other abilities within the human system. Yeah.
Right. So I'll briefly go through our 10 levels. And this is kind of like an old system. They don't use this system so much now because I'm not there, and some of these levels are not available. So level 1 is all just the theory stuff of the not coming and so on. Clothes on, super safe, just getting the theoretical framework. Level 2, but there's a level 0, which is dealing with the primal therapy and cognitive to understand your stuff. Like, you should have a strong base in therapy and dealing with stuff even before you start doing Tantra is my recommendation. So then level 2 is off, doing the de-armoring, the anus and the vagina, learning how to actually have sex. Level 3 is the wildest level, and that's where the sex stops after level 3, is you basically do your fantasies. You write them up on the board, your top fantasy, and then everyone fulfills each other's fantasies, and it's completely wild and crazy. And so that gets you to the point that then you've done all your fantasies, and then you can stop thinking about damn sex and you can move on. Level 4 is where you go into devotion, you go into prayer, you go into surrender practices. And we would do things like, we'd say, okay, you're going to lead a group of 5 people through an exercise for 10 minutes, and they're going to rate you to 0 to 10, honestly, how open them up to God. So they would go and do this, and they would just fail badly, and we'd take the average score of every person, and the average, would be 1.5, 2. And then we'd teach them how to surrender, how to be devotional, how to pray to not, God or a specific guru or anything, but just their higher power, whatever they can relate to, whatever God form and they would go and do the same exercise again once they had prayed, and we teach them how to pray in a non kind of dogmatic way, but in a way, a really open-hearted, vulnerable way, and then do the exercise, and then the average score up to around about 8 in performance level. So it's kind of like a semi-scientific way to prove how to get humble and let spirit move through you. So that's level 4. Level 5 is constructive criticism. You get in groups of 5. You research and call it's the person in the middle, their friends, their family, and you find out what people actually really think about them and that don't say to their face, that they wouldn't be able to sustain their friendship if they said to their face. And they take all that energy, they compare it together, and then you put that one person in the middle and say, okay, this is what people really think of you. Generally, they think you're a great guy and you're really cool and you're honest, but here's your shadow side. And they tell you how your ego is operating, and it's horrendous. It's horrible. And most of the people who hate TNT with a passion are people that have gone through that workshop and saw something about themselves they didn't like, and then they just kind of kick it back on TNT. Now, we used to do that feedback ourselves, which was very dangerous, because if that person can't handle that constructive criticism and can't feel that you did it trying to serve them, they can put on that they don't understand me, they hate me, they've got a personal vigilante against me, and I'm going to hate them and criticize them. And most of our harsh critics are people that we got too close to their ego and showed them a dark side of themselves that they could not accept, and then put it out on us and called us the devil and whatever. So that's level 5. But I would say if you can survive that one, that's one of the most powerful transformation tools, is to really look at your own shadow side and then give them tools how to deal with that stuff. And you can grow incredibly from that. Level 6 is where we would used to do prayer and ceremony together, and we used to drink like kava kava, which is a natural tonic in America, which is, has no hallucinatory effects or anything like that, but it just seemed to slow down the talking to ourselves mind. And if I could go into a spiritual state called a satori, I could then transmit that to other people when they're a little bit more open, just from not thinking so much. And people could go into, a satori, which is kind of like a temporary enlightened state, where you suddenly look at yourself and you can see yourself from a higher perspective, and you see your mind and your ego and your body doing stuff, and you can kind of detach from it. It's kind of like an out-of-body experience, but you're all of a sudden entered into the world, and everything kind of turns to light, and kind of not like light, bright light, but things fluoresce in a kind of subtle green thing, and it's incredibly pleasurable. And we would just spend 2 days in that sacred ceremony space. But we can't do that workshop now because I don't need that workshop, and no one's been in satori since I left TNT. So it's I'm not interested really in teaching anymore. So that level was not offered. Level 7 is life's purpose stuff, where you sit for a week in absolute darkness, isolation, no sound. You got earplugs on. You're sitting with a whole bunch of other people, maybe 50 other people, and you just sit for a week and you consider, why am I here? What's my life's purpose? And interesting processes happen in that, and you get to see what you're perhaps resisting, what you need to face, and deal with that. Level 8 is a teacher training, where we train people how to do like the TNT massage, which is this whole massage I designed that can really open up the body and leads to quite interesting yogic things happening in the body. But also we train like the gigolos, and the femdoms, how the women can learn how to dominate men tantrically, the guys how to become tantric gigolos, or a teacher training where they learn how to be a teacher in whatever they wanted to teach in their own right. And it's very, very tough, level 8. We have very high standards that you have to be really good to teach anything with the TNT. And that's why I think we have a lot of very good teachers in the new Tantra. And that's why I stepped back to allow those guys to do that. And then level 9 is about how do you meditate? How do you go into a space where what I call daytime dream yoga, where you watch yourself as if you're watching from consciousness, the same consciousness that is there watching yourself dream at night. You get to the same place where you can watch yourself, your body in this waking dream, and expand consciousness through that. So that's level 9. And then level 10 we don't have, because that's the whole kind of enlightenment thing. But who knows if that's even real or how to do that, because I certainly can't. So level 10 is the kind of ultimate goal, which none of us are qualified, and probably no one on this earth right now is qualified to kind of teach, because there doesn't seem to be too many enlightened people in this world right now. So that's the 10 levels.
Wow. Some of those levels seem really intense.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then how many people have done all 10 levels?
Well, no one's done all 10 levels. How many people have done all 9 levels? A lot. Maybe, I don't know, 100, 150 people. Thousands of people have been through our workshop. So done all levels, maybe 200. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask Paris, but yeah, quite a lot of people have done all the levels.
Remarkable.
Level 5 is the fucker. I can see that, because like getting that ego feedback and really just seeing that shadow side, especially in like a spiritual ritual space around people who are actually trusted. Like if someone goes, oh, and you're a bitchy, manipulative asshole, and I can say, oh yeah, fuck off, whatever. But if it's someone who I look up to in a fucking ritual space, then I think that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, that hurts like fuck, that level. It's you got to be strong mentally. You have to really work through a lot of stuff to deal with that, And that was one of the mistakes that we made in New Tantra. In the early days, we, would take, people who were just not ready for that stuff. And, they would say yes, and they would pay their money, and I really want to hear what people say. But, we attracted some quite mentally unready, not strong enough people in the early days, people who, wanted to be fixed or healed by us. We are not a, healing therapy kind of thing. It's just, these are workshops. So yeah, you have to really, and that's why I said we switched from us as the facilitators giving that feedback. That was really dangerous, because then some people would just hate you after that. It's more difficult if you've just got 5 random strangers in your group and you're all just trying to help each other. It's much more difficult to project your anger on one person after that.
When you've not got someone who's like in that guru position or teacher position.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I stepped out of it. I just got sick of being in that teacher position and people acting all weird around you and all the projections and you just, you see some people just outright lie or hate you, or just, even though you're trying to help them. So I was like, fuck it. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Did you learn anything else over those 10 years of doing it about the spiritual path?
Sorry, you dropped out for a moment.
I mean, I was wondering. Yeah, so I was wondering, like, I guess you mentioned you learned about being selective, about who comes up and moves through it. Were there any other like serious learnings about what it means to walk a tantric path, or even a spiritual path, full stop, over that? How many years was it? 10 years you were doing TNT?
Yeah, a lot. I haven't had, we made a lot of mistakes nowadays because this was very uncharted territory. So yeah, I was very naive when I first started the New Tantra, and I just kind of thought that people were intrinsically good and that they, all wanted to grow and they wanted to learn and things. And then I kind of saw over time that it's more the exception, the person who really, really wants to grow and see their shadow side and deal with that stuff. So that was probably one of the biggest learnings for me is, not all people really want to grow and learn, and with the kind of vigor and gusto that I did. I mean, I was kind of crazy. I would just go to the toughest teachers I could find and say, tell me all my shit, just lay it on me. And I thought most people were like that. And then I realized, like, no, most people want to feel good about themselves and stroke their ego, and they don't like when that is challenged. So yeah, that was one of the big learnings.
What was your journey as a student like? I wanted to ask this at the start, but we never got there. Like, because I'm super curious, where did Alex Vartman, the TNT I come from?
Yes. I love being a student. So I've always traveled around the world trying to find teachers that could challenge me. So I went to India. I studied went to Osho ashram, studied. I mean, I've studied, looked into, there's some good technology even in Scientology. It's often there's good things, even though the institution or whatever might be kind of corrupt or whatever. There's some, there's often gems. So I went to a lot of different schools, a lot of any workshop that I found. I did a huge amount of therapy. I did meditation workshops and visited gurus in India and other Tantra teachers and things. And I don't know, I must have gone to like 20, 30, 40 different teachers and so on. And I was always very lucky that, I would kind of step into these places and they would, for some reason, welcome me with open arms and like, have a lot of kind of respect for me. And I managed to get into kind of like the inner circles of some very, very influential teachers and things, and taken under their wing. And I'm very grateful to all my teachers. And then it got to a point where it's like, no, I want to do something that's kind of more weird and different. And I, want to branch out and do something unique. And, I can't do that under anyone else's name because, it might be kind of, I don't want to embarrass them or, okay, there's our great student, Alex, wearing a dress. It's like, I'm not the kind of, trophy student like that. So then I just, okay, I'm just going to branch off and do my own thing. And so that's where I started doing the New Tantra. And that's why, as I said before, I wanted to call it the New Tantra, just so I could be free from having to follow other traditions or lineages or whatever. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
I know some people are like, they struggle with that idea of breaking away from a tradition and trying to start something new. There's like I guess the traditionalists, right, who are like, no, if you're doing Tantra, it needs to be Tantra as it's been done for 2,000 years, or else you're gonna I don't know, it's gonna crash and burn horribly somehow. I mean, I don't really agree with that perspective. I'm all for innovation and exploration. I think I come from quite a like artistic background where it all seems to be like a lot of this stuff. I always think many of these practices, it's kind of about the art of being a human being and finding new ways to play symphonies with the human soul almost. And if you can come up with a new instrument or a new sound, then why not try it?
Exactly. And I'm all kind of like, if you want to do traditional stuff, great, do traditional stuff. If you want to do new stuff, great. I don't care. I don't have an opinion about what other people should be doing in their practice. It's none of my business. So, why are people so up, into my business and say, oh, this is right, or this is wrong? The bottom line question is, how much does it help that person? Does doing traditional sutric stuff help someone? Some people it will, some people it won't. How much does it actually radically change their sex life? That's why at the start of my book, I said, we'll challenge any Tantra school in the world, to who does the tantric sexual practices best. Just, okay, we'll just line up a couple of women and, get our top guys to fuck them or your top guys to fuck them. And straight away, those women will know who's got the best tantric practice. It's, it's like, oh yeah, I speak French. Oh really? Okay, well, let's start speaking French and see if you actually can do it. I would, and I always put that challenge out there. Like, if you think your tantra is stronger, use your traditional 2,000-year-old tantric stuff and let's put it together with our modern stuff and let's just see whose is best. Whatever works.
What works. That's fantastic. You're reaching a point where we can wrap this up. Like, need to finish in a few minutes anyway. Daniel, I don't know if you had any final thoughts or comments at all.
None at all. I'm still digesting so much of what was said here. Kind of buzzing, but it was a fantastic conversation from my side, at least. It was great to hear.
Yes, great questions. I loved it. I very enjoyed hanging with you guys.
Likewise. It's good to meet you. Like, I've heard your name from many people. I know many of your students, and now I get to meet the the elusive Alex, or Alex. Let everyone digest themselves.
Great. All right, guys. Well, take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alexa.
Likewise.
Thank you for your time, and
happy meditating.
Yeah, thank you. Back to my boring meditation practice. All right.
See ya.
Ciao.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
Bye.